Welcome back. This is episode 3 of What Does It Mean to Be Well, a 5-part series I'm making for Mental Health Awareness Month. We've named the gap between not being sick and actually flourishing, and we've looked honestly at what the church has built and where it's still catching up. Today, I want to get personal, though, genuinely personal. I'm going to tell you some things about my own story that I don't usually tell in this order, and I'm doing it because I think your relationship with loving yourself is probably more complicated than you've admitted to anyone, possibly even including yourself. So if this lands somewhere, stick with me. I'm Jen Collier. I work at the intersection of applied positive psychology, coaching psychology, and Christian psychology. Do you already know how to love yourself? Most of us would say yes. Of course, I know how to take care of myself. I often know how to set limits. I sometimes practice self care. But I want to ask a slightly different version of that question today. Do you know where your sense of your own worth comes from? And is that source actually capable of holding the weight you're putting on it? There's an assumption baked into the familiar reading of the Greatest Commandment: love your neighbor as yourself. And the assumption is this: you already know how to do that second part. You love yourself perfectly, sure, but basically, yeah. So just extend the same basic love to the person next to you. That's a reasonable reading. But here's the question I couldn't shake when I started researching this. What if the as yourself part is already broken? What if the self love that we're supposed to be extending outwards is itself distorted, sourced from the wrong place, built on an unstable foundation? Then extending it to others doesn't multiply love, it multiplies the distortion. I want to tell you something before I get personal because I think that this is really important and I don't want you to just think that this is my story. Research published in 2024 found that Christians often have a genuinely complex and conflicted understanding of healthy self love. Not because they're doing something wrong, but because they're holding two things in tension that are genuinely hard to hold together. The dignity of Imago Dei, which says that they bear the image of God and have profound inherent worth, and the call to prefer others above themselves, which they sometimes interpret as meaning self regard is suspect. The result, then, is often confusion. And the researcher argued for practical support, not just theological permission, to help Christians learn what healthy self love actually looks like. That resonated with me because I spent a long time not knowing what it looked like, and the consequences of that were significant. I need to go back to high school for a minute. I promise that this is as uncomfortable for me to tell as it will be for you to hear. But we're going to do it anyways. On the surface, things looked good. I graduated 13th in my class. I was involved in everything. And at our senior awards ceremony, the one where the whole class votes for awards, I got one. Most likely to write a romance novel. Out of context, that sounds almost sweet. In context, it was actually the final thrust of a knife that had been going in for years. We have a name for that now that we didn't have then. It was slut shaming. And it started years before, not from anything I had initially done, but from a rumor. And then because I was young and desperate and made some choices that fed the narrative, it became self-fulfilling. I was blacklisted, ostracized in that particular way that only teenage girls can execute. And luckily, this was before social media, so I just got the old-fashioned version, which was more than enough. What I want you to understand about what followed, though, is that it was not rebellion. It was hunger. I was looking for something I did not have the language for: worth, belonging, love, the sense that I was wanted. And I was looking for it in every available place. And that search became more desperate. And the choices got harder to come back from. I worked as a stripper, I had an abortion, and somewhere in the middle of all of it, without ever quite intending to, I had broken all 10 commandments. I'm not telling that to you to shock you. I'm telling you that because that is what the hunger cost. That's what happens when love is sourced from the wrong place and there's nothing underneath it to hold you. It doesn't hurt you quietly. It moves through you and out into the world, and it leaves damage behind in you and in others. Immediately after I was preparing the notes for this video, I had a session with a new client who is in exactly the same place that I'm describing. This is real, and it happens every day with people who are seeking to understand their own value. So let me name some patterns because yours hopefully probably might look nothing like mine. And I don't want you to miss this in yourself. Broken self love looks like seeking worth from external validation, needing someone else's approval to feel like you're okay. It looks like performing for love rather than receiving, working constantly to earn something that should already be yours. And it looks like giving from depletion rather than overflow, being generous out of guilt or fear rather than abundance. The giving looks the same from the outside, but the source is completely different. Any of those feel familiar? I'm not asking you to make you feel uncomfortable. I'm asking because you can't address something that you haven't named. Here's where the story turns for me. And I want to tell it exactly as it happened because it's so improbable that I couldn't have invented it. My best friend got married and I was the maid of honor. She had been telling me about Jesus for years and I had zero interest. I had enough shame in my life without adding religion to it. But she got me to church that week because of her wedding because the best man wanted to go. And so I sat in the back row with my exit strategy fully mapped out, ready to run. After we got back, she handed me a book as a thank you gift for being her maid of honor, Purpose Driven Life, 40 Days of Readings. And the best man, who lived in Atlanta while I lived in Austin, suggested that we read it together and talk about it chapter by chapter over the phone. I would never, ever have touched that book under any other circumstances, but I was completely nuts for this guy. So I said yes. And I opened that first page and read the first line. It's not about you. 18 years later, I still remember exactly where I was sitting. The next 9 days were something that I do not have adequate words for. And 9 days later, on my 26th birthday, he told me he was recommitting his life to Christ. And I got it. And I wanted it. And so I gave my life too. After years of searching for love from person after person, I understood for the first time that the King of the universe loved me, that he could make me whole and was offering to make me his, not because of what I had done or not done, not because of who I had been, but because of who he is. My husband's name is in my phone to this day as my bonus prize. I gave him that contact name that very day because I wanted to make sure I never forgot the deep, covenantal, extraordinary love that we have for each other is just a drop in the bucket compared to what my Savior has for me. Justin was the bonus. Jesus was the point. And this is what I mean when I talk about finding a source that actually holds the weight. Everything before that moment was me trying to fill a God-shaped space with human-sized things. When the right source finally showed up, it changed not just what I believed, but who I was capable of becoming. Here's the foundation. Genesis 1:27. So God created mankind in his own image. Psalm 139. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your worth is not earned. It is declared by the one who made you, who knows you entirely, and who made you on purpose. That is the source from which healthy self-love flows, not self-improvement, not other people's opinions, not achievement or appearance or approval of the room. The declaration of the one who knitted you together. When that is your source, loving yourself looks completely different than when you're sourcing it from somewhere else. It's quieter and it's more stable and it's much less desperate. And here's the thing, when love is sourced from that place, it actually has something to offer others. So here's the architecture. And I want to be clear, this isn't a framework that I invented. This is what the text says, what the research confirms, and what my own life and sometimes excruciating detail has demonstrated. Love the Lord first, not because he needs the top spot, but because he's the source of your worth. And without that source, everything downstream is unstable. From that flows a healthy relationship with yourself. Not selfishness, not self-obsession, but stable, grounded, imago Dei rooted sense of your own worth. And from that flows sustainable love of others. Get the order wrong, and the whole thing softens. Try to love others without a healthy relationship with yourself, and you'll give until you're empty and call it faithfulness. Try to love yourself without God as the source, and you'll spend your life trying to fill a hole then nothing else is shaped to fill. I know. I tried both. I've been building a framework around this. It's called the Greatest Commandment model, and it's grounded in the text of Luke 10. 7 dimensions of whole person well being that correspond to how the greatest commandment is structured. One of those 7 dimensions is love yourself, defined as honoring your God given worth by caring for life and body as treasured and redeemed by Him. I built an assessment that measures where you are in each of these 7 dimensions right now, not where you think you should be, where you actually are. That's coming this summer. If something is stirred you today in this episode, if the love yourself piece landed somewhere specific for you, I've made something for that. It's a pathway guide and it's in the description. That's the most directly relevant resource that I have for where we went today. The Greatest Commandment Assessment waitlist is also in the description, and that's the fuller tool that launches this summer. Next episode, some of what I've been talking about is actually measurable scientifically, and that matters more than you might think for how we talk about faith and well-being. Before we go, I want to give you one thing to do right now. Before you flip to the next video, before you open another tab, before autoplay kicks in, just pause. Put your phone face down or close the laptop halfway. Look at your hands. These are the hands that God made, the same hands He called good. Take 3 slow breaths and let your shoulders drop. Then ask Him one question. What do you want me to do with what I just heard? Listen for 60 seconds. Even if nothing comes, especially if nothing comes, then go. Be blessed. See you in episode 4.